Hey, what's going on out there, guys? It's your boy LB, aka Mr. Nelson 89, coming at you guys with a new CD update. So, I thought I would go ahead and show you guys some Metallica CDs I done bought. Yeah, I've been listening to Metallica lately. It's just that I know in recent years, Metallica's gotten a lot of hate. A lot of people have said that they really left or distanced themselves away from their early heavy metal, thrash metal roots, and yeah, they've kind of lost their way in recent years. I've had friends that have listened that were huge Metallica fans. I've heard like their albums sporadically here and there, but I decided to go ahead and just delve into it. So I decided to buy their classic albums from the 80s, man, the ones that are still considered masterpieces even today, and where the band, even with the criticism that they've gotten recently, they still continue to have that respect because of these records. So I thought I'll go ahead and just show you guys what I got. So of course, the first CD, Kill 'Em All, released in 1983. This is the debut album, and there's not a whole lot I can say about this album that hasn't been said countless times. I mean, this is the album that really started it all as far as bringing the whole thrash metal community to a wider audience, because thrash metal was something that was underground. It was started by musicians who were against the whole glam metal scene that was really burgeoning out of the LA Sunset Strip. The guys like Poison and Rat and Motley Crue that were wearing like the makeup, and especially Poison. I mean, I like Poison, but I mean, when I first saw Poison, man, I thought they were girls, man. Seriously, especially CC DeVille. I mean, CC DeVille, he looked the most like a female out of all those guys. But anyway, Metallica, man, they were from Los Angeles, and they were against that. They wanted to be themselves, and they wanted to bring a more of a street appeal, raw or more aggressive sound, and that's what Kill 'Em All is. And it really just set the standard for the whole thrash community. It really just started off the whole movement. A lot of bands came after this release, and there were bands that formed before Metallica, like Exodus. I think they formed like in 1979. They're from the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where Metallica really paid their dues, where they really broke out, was that San Francisco Bay Area scene, because Metallica wasn't getting a whole lot of love in Los Angeles, because I watched a documentary where it said that they were too punk for the heavy metal clubs, and they were too heavy metal for the punk clubs, and people ridiculed them and made fun of them because they weren't doing what all the other bands were doing, which they were following the lines of the more commercial mainstream of glam metal. I mean, if you look at these guys, they don't look very glammy. You know what I'm saying? They look like they will knock your ass out. You know what I'm saying? Excuse my language, but that's just the way they look. They look sort of menacing and confrontational, man. But the music on this album is great, man. Like I said, it's raw, it's in your face, very aggressive, and I think probably the most popular song from this album is "Seek and Destroy." I think "Seek and Destroy" is the most popular because, I mean, I know it's a staple in their live performances. "Jump in the Fire," the fourth track on here, that's probably my favorite song on here. "Whiplash" is definitely good. "Anesthesia," "Pulling Teeth," that's an instrumental performed by bassist Cliff Burton, and it's just the instrumental with him. It's just him doing his lead bass. Cliff Burton, how he got into Metallica was like, he was in a band called Trauma, and they performed, I believe, in LA. And James and Lars, and I guess Dave, I believe Dave was still in the band at that time. They they saw him performing, and he performed this lead bass solo through wah-wah pedals, and they thought that he was performing a guitar, but it was his bass. And they immediately sought him at they immediately sought after him, and he was willing to join the band, because I think he was like becoming like bored or something with Trauma. I think he said that they were becoming too like mainstream or whatever, but he joined the band on the condition that they relocate to the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where Cliff was from, and the rest is history. I mean, great history with Cliff Burton, but definitely a good album. Kill 'Em All. This CD is still available. I mean, most of them, if not all of Metallica's albums are still available. Easy to find, but definitely a great start, and I highly recommend it, man. If you want to get into Metallica, just start from the beginning, man, and just go forward, because especially with the 80s era, man, because you'll definitely hear the progression with each album that the band was going for. But Kill 'Em All, definitely a great album. Go ahead and pick it up. It's definitely a must-have if you're somebody that's wanting to get into thrash metal. It's definitely one of the albums that you should buy within the big four. Alright, so next CD is Ride the Lightning, released in 1984. This is their second album, and with this record right here, the band, you could tell that the band was moving forward and they was progressing with their sound. One thing I liked in particular was James' vocals. On the first album, Kill 'Em All, his vocals were very harsh, and he really didn't sing. He really didn't sing a whole lot on Kill 'Em All. It was more harsh vocals, more shouting, so to speak, screaming. But this album, James really started to sing a little bit more on this record. Also, the sound of the album, you can tell through specific tracks, man, that the band were progressing far beyond thrash, and that has to do with Cliff Burton. Cliff Burton was a classical trained guitarist, and he also studied music theory. And I believe this was also the first album where he started to contribute to the songwriting of the records. I think this was the first album he started contributing to songwriting. But like I said, he was a classical trained guitarist, and he studied music theory, and with his knowledge he was able to give the band suggestions and give them tips on what they were doing, and it really helped the band a lot. His contributions, him being in that band really helped them a lot. You know what I'm saying? It really gave them it was really beneficial to them. It was really beneficial, and his musical knowledge really helped. I believe there was only one single released from this album. That was Creeping Death. That was like the official single, the lead single, Creeping Death, which is based on the Bible. I believe it's based on the Exodus chapter, where God, he killed the firstborns of the Egyptians. They were watching the movie the Ten Commandments. Great movie, might I add. And how they came up with the title was Cliff Burton. He said, "Whoa!" When that scene came up, Cliff Burton was like, "Whoa, that's like a creeping death," and it just stuck, and they just wrote the song around it, man. There's also another instrumental here called "The Call of Cthulhu." Great instrumental. That right there is a great example of the band's progression. Like, if you just listen to "The Call of Cthulhu," you will see what I'm saying, how the band was progressing with each album. And I also forgot to mention that, Dave Mustaine, we all know that he got kicked out of the band, and Kirk Hammett, who was also in Exodus, who was originally in Exodus, he took his place. These albums, both of these albums have songs that were co-written or with Dave, while Dave Mustaine was in the band. I think most of it is on Kill 'Em All. But there's a few songs on here as well. I believe "Trapped in Ice" was a song that was co-written. I believe he got credited for that song. But it's an interesting track, man. It's about waking up in a cryonic state. Like you've been frozen, and you just wake up, and there's nothing you can do. You're just frozen, and the lyrical content is just great. James does a great job at going to the detail on how your body's freezing. You want to scream, but you can't do nothing. You're just awoke, but you're still in that cryonic state, man. Great song. And you got songs like Ride the Lightning, which is about a person who is innocent being electrocuted. It goes along with the album cover with the electric chair. It's not. And James Hetfield, he said that the song is not being critical of capital punishment, because he said he actually is a supporter of capital punishment. But it's just about a person who is innocent being executed, put to death through the electric chair. You also have From Whom the Bell Tolls. That was a promotional track, I believe. That was one of the promotional tracks. Not really sure what that song's about. I haven't really done a whole lot of research on that. Great song though, but I can't really tell you what that song's about. Fade to Black is another promotional single from the album, and that song is about contemplating suicide. And the inspiration behind that song was the band was supposed to do a show in Boston, and all their equipment got stolen, and James Hetfield, he felt powerless because all their equipment was gone and they really couldn't do nothing at that time, man. Those, like, the sad, depressing lyrics are from how he felt powerless. And that song is like one of the first, like, I guess you could say power ballads that you hear from the band, because it starts off very slow and mellow like power ballads that were more prevalent in glam metal, but towards the middle or end of the track, the riffs come in, the tempo speeds up, and it just goes full on thrash. The same with the first track, Fight Fire with Fire. It starts off with an acoustic intro, and then out of nowhere, like, the heavy riffs come in, then the tempo comes in and just goes in. But Ride the Lightning, man, definitely a great record. Great album. Definitely go pick it up. And you can get all these albums for a reasonable price, man. I got this for $5.99 at Best Buy. So if you come across it, pick it up. Next album, and probably my favorite out of these albums, is Master of Puppets. Released in 1986. This is the third album by Metallica, and unfortunately it was their last album with Cliff Burton. While they were on tour, and I'm not sure if the tour was named after the album or if it was called the Damage Inc. tour. I'm not really sure. Maybe some of you out there can clarify that. But while they was on promotional tour for the album in Sweden, the driver of their tour bus lost control and wrecked. The bus actually flipped, and Cliff was thrown from it, and the bus landed on top of him and killed him, man. And it's really unfortunate. And that happened after the album was released, but still, unfortunately, Cliff, he didn't get a chance to enjoy that later success that the band would enjoy. Master of Puppets is also the first album that they released on a major label, which was Elektra. After Ride the Lightning, 2 months after that album, I believe, they signed to Elektra Records. Ride the Lightning and Kill 'Em All were both released on Megaforce Records, which is an independent label, which at the time was primarily about heavy metal or mainly thrash metal. But in recent years, they've signed punk acts. I believe Bad Brains, I believe they signed to the label recently. I know their last album, Into the Future, was released on Megaforce, and I believe they've signed some alternative rock acts. But they've expanded their label a little bit now. But anyway, Master of Puppets, this is considered by many to be Metallica's magnum opus, because it really showed the progression that the band were going for. And Cliff Burton, his contribution was even more intact on this album. The production done by Fleming Rasmussen, great production. It really gives this album this atmospheric sound. The guitar work, the solos by both James and Kurt are great. Lars' drumming, I really enjoy. Even though I've read that he gets criticized a lot because he's not the most skillful drummer. I guess if you put him up against like Charlie Benante from Anthrax or Dave Lombardo from Slayer, I guess he wouldn't be the most skillful, but I think the drumming on here was great. I think the music all around was great. And the album kind of followed the same format as Ride the Lightning. The first track starts off with an acoustic intro, then goes full on in. And then by the fourth track, you have sort of like a ballad, power ballad type song. The song on here is called Welcome to Sanitarium, which is about being in a mental asylum. And it's based around a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was also a book and later a movie that starred Jack Nicholson in the 70s. And then you have the song Master of Puppets, which is about, I think the theme is about cocaine. And what's another track on here I enjoy? Disposable Heroes, which is about war. It's about how most people, being in the army, you're being told what to do. And like in the hook, he tells you, I tell you when to fight, when to die. Leper Messiah, which a lot of people get this confused. Leper Messiah is not about religion. It's not an attack on religion. Let's just get that clear. It's not an attack on religion. The song is actually about how it's about, let's talk, like, it's about televangelism. Televangelism was something that became really prominent in the 1980s. Now, a lot of those televangelists were crooked. They were corrupt. We all know that. What's his name? Jim Baker. All of them got caught up in like scandals and whatnot. And the song is about how a lot of people, they blindly follow these people. They blindly follow these people in spite of what they do. They just blindly follow them. And that's what it's about. It's not an attack on religion. It's not an attack on religion or Christianity. Now, I mean, don't get me. I go to church myself. I go to church myself. It's not an attack on that. It's about how people blindly follow these people, which is true. Because there's a lot of people that do blindly follow those people, those certain televangelists in spite of what they do. I mean, I'd agree there's some out there that genuinely want to make a difference. Like, I watch Dr. Charles Stanley. He's really the only one I watch because I genuinely feel that he wants to make a difference. But that's what that song is about. The Leper Messiah is not about Jesus. It's about those corrupt televangelists, about how people just blindly follow them no matter what, even when they're corrupt. Also, you have the song Orion, which is another instrumental on the track. Instrumentals was something that was prevalent on Metallica albums, man. But definitely a great album. This is my favorite one. This is the one I usually listen to most of the time when I want to check out Metallica. But Master of Puppets, man, if you want to check out, if you don't want to go, I mean, it shouldn't be too hard for you to go that far with Metallica's early stuff. But Master of Puppets, this is definitely one that you should definitely check out if you want to dig into Metallica's early years. And the last one I have right here is And Justice for All, released in 1988. This is the first album they done without Cliff Burton, and it's also the first one they done with their new bassist, Jason Newsted, who was from another thrash metal band from Arizona called Flotsam and Jetsam. They added him to the band. I think his first appearance was actually on an EP they done in '87 called the $5 and $98 something Garage Revisit. I forget. I have to look it up again, but his first appearance was on the EP they done in like 1987. But And Justice for All, I think, is a good album. I don't think it's as good as the previous three I've just shown you, but it did show more of a progression in the band's sound. The songs on here are a lot more complex, and they're also a lot longer. And I know that I was reading the other day where there's a few songs here that the band, they won't even perform live. I forget which song it was. I think it might have been Eye of the Beholder. But I think when they went on tour for this album, like in '89 or somewhere around that time, Kurt Hammett said that, no, it was Justice and Justice for All, because that song is 9 minutes and 44 seconds. When they was on tour for this album, Kurt Hammett said in an interview that when they got off a stage performing that song, he said one of them said, man, we're never effing performing that song again because it's so long and so complex. And that was one of the biggest critiques about this album from fans, was that the songs were way too long compared to the other albums. And I know the Frayed Ends of Sanity, that's one song that the band, they didn't play that song live until like a year ago, when they did this request tour where fans voted on what songs they wanted the band to play live, and that song got the highest votes, the Frayed Ends of Sanity. Interesting song. That song's about paranoia. Songs about paranoia. Most of the theme around this album is about the justice system and the establishment. Those are the lyrics. Lars Ulrich, he said in an interview that during the recording of this album, the writing also, that was their CNN. That was their CNN years. That him and James, they just sat and watched CNN, and when they found something about the blacklisting, that's how they came up with The Shortest Straw. They just watched that. They just watched CNN, and that's how they came up with their topics and their titles. But one thing I should note, also, I can't end this without mentioning that the bass on this album really can't be heard only on a couple of songs. For some reason, they had the bass turned down, and the producer Flemming Rasmussen, he said that's because that this was also I think this was the first album that the band produced themselves, but their producer Rasmussen, he also was there with them producing, but he said that's because like he wasn't in the studio, the band kept on going, and he said he wasn't there to oversee the mixing process either. So that has a lot to do with it too, with why the album sounds like what most critics described as sterile, not very atmospheric like Master of Puppets or Rod the Lightning. But I also read somewhere where the reason why the bass was turned down, there's been a couple of reasons. Somebody said it was because it was like a hazing ritual to ring in the new basses, and then James and Lars said that it's because he played the bass at the same frequency as James and Kurt were playing their guitars. So I don't know. That's just a bunch of stuff I've heard. And also, I think it was the Grammy Awards in 1988. The Grammy Awards had this category called Best Rock and Metal Performance or Album. Yeah, I think it was album. Metallica was up for that, and Jethro Tull, which I know about Jethro Tull, but as far as I know, I'm not that much into Jethro Tull, but I know they weren't a metal band. I know they were far from a heavy metal band. But them and Metallica and I think a few other bands were up for best album of that year, and everybody pretty much was certain that Metallica was going to win. Like, matter of fact, they said Metallica was backstage waiting to go on stage and accept the award, and Jethro Tull won. And it was a big stank, man. Like, everybody said that was the first indication that the Grammy Awards really didn't know shit, which is why I don't even watch the Grammys anyway. But they said that was the first indication that the Grammy committee was out of touch with what was really going on in music. But it's considered one of the biggest what the heck moments in Grammy history, like one of the biggest upsets in Grammy history. But I couldn't end that without mentioning that, man. But I still think this is a good album. I've been listening to it today for some time, because there's like I Ought to Be Holder and Frayed Ends of Sanity. I really enjoy those songs. But yeah, that's all I have for Metallica right now. I just wanted to get the classic masterpiece albums that everybody enjoys so much, man. But Metallica's a great band. I respect them. I've enjoyed all these CDs. I've been listening to them for the past couple of weeks. Great music, great thrash metal, great heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, man. It's great music. But I was trying not to say so much in my videos. I just said it like 3 times, That's pretty good because I usually do it all through the video. But anyway, I hope you guys get something out of this video. If you're somebody that has never really listened to Metallica and maybe want to try out their discography, I recommend checking out their early stuff, especially in the 80s first, and maybe working your way up. But definitely some great music that I really enjoy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope everyone has a blessed and Merry Christmas if I don't see you or put up a video anytime soon. And as always, love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.